Hello everyone, welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host Paula Taylor and this is episode 101. So I wanted to say a quick word about last week's show. We did a little bit of a 100th episode celebration, and kind of at the last minute I said I wanted to get interactive. I usually get some really excellent comments during the live show on Facebook, and I generally don't respond to them as they come in just because I want to have continuity and I don't want to lose my train of thought. And so last week I kind of tried a little experiment and I asked for comments and I was going to read the comments on the air, and then I made a joke in the show notes for the podcast of last week. I said I felt like I was the teacher in Ferris Bueller's Day Off, which is an iconic 80s movie. If you've never seen it, definitely watch it. But basically Ferris Bueller is playing hooky and there's a scene where the teacher is calling attendance and he just keeps saying Bueller, Bueller, Bueller over and over again. And it's a little bit how I felt last week because I kept asking for some feedback. So I just want to apologize if anyone felt like I put them on the spot. I actually got some really lovely comments afterwards from people about some of their favorite practices, going to their energetic sanctuary. Somebody said they do that a lot and it's one of their favorite things to do. They use that exercise a lot. I was actually just introducing that exercise with a client today. So I really appreciate your comments, whether you make them live and I read them or not. I wanted to say thank you for those of you who have been with the show from the beginning, or whether you're just starting out now. There's a lot of richness in this experience that we share, and I have a lot of gratitude for that. And then just briefly, next week, I keep saying I think the Trauma-Based Fears series is over, and I think next week's going to be the last episode. And we're going to talk about uncertainty, because I think that uncertainty is really kind of the fear that underlies almost all these other trauma-based fears that we've talked about. The fear of not knowing what happens next is really hard to deal with, and especially if you have a history of trauma. So I think it's going to be a really good show. I keep making vague references to having uncertainty in my life, and I think next week we're going to kind of delve into a little bit more of the details around that. And so I hope that you will join me for that show. So tonight we're going to talk about denial. And you might say, well, denial is not really a fear. And that's true. Denial is actually what we do to avoid our fears, to push our fears away, to push the issues we don't want to deal with behind us. We use denial. And so we're going to talk about this, and I think the easiest way to talk about this is for me just to tell you how this came to me, because it's interesting when you're talking about denial. Sometimes it takes a while to get to what's underneath that denial, and a lot of times we don't even realize we're in denial. And I had some pretty strong realizations on this journey that I'm going to talk about. And so just bear in mind that you can be in denial about just about anything. And when you're not wanting to feel these fears that are based on whatever the traumatic experience or experiences are that you've experienced in your life, when you're trying to run from kind of some realizations about core beliefs or things that you feel like are really at a deep part of you, that is when denial comes in, and it is very powerful. And again, a lot of times we don't even realize we're in denial. That's why it's called denial. So we're going to talk a little bit today about how you can recognize that you're in denial, how we can move through that, how we can work with that energetically. And then I'm going to answer some questions that I think are pretty common that people might ask about denial. So let's start with my story tonight. And interestingly, and this is one of the reasons that I wanted to bring this to the awareness of the collective, because I'm not sure that a lot of people have this understanding. Denial, it lives in the body in a physical place. If you've read my book, Spiritual Integration, which you can get on the website, paulataylorenergy.com, there's a whole chapter where I talk about dealing with back body issues. And we've talked about it a few times on the show before. But essentially, if you think about anything that comes into your awareness, because we are kind of forward-facing individuals, we experience life in front of us, sensorily, I guess that's a word. With our senses, we see, we smell, we taste, we hear a little bit to the sides, but generally we're forward facing. So things come into our field, they come into our awareness from the front a lot of times. And what do we do when we can't deal with them, when we're overwhelmed, when it's a traumatic experience and we don't have those tools to process in the moment? We kind of shove them behind us, like, ugh, I'll deal with that later. Sometimes we try to shove them down in the abdomen area, and we've talked about that a little bit. But for tonight, we're going to focus on this idea of how we shove things behind us. And this is experienced in the physical body in a myriad of ways. As a massage therapist for almost 20 years, every single person I work on says, I need some work on my back and my neck. That is the back of your body. And again, there's physical reasons why this happens, and we talk about this sometimes, but we're going to focus on the energetic tonight. And that is that when you're pushing things behind you, these emotional issues, these things, these fears that we're not ready to deal with, literally get stuck in the back of our body. And not just at the top, all the way down the back of our body, in the glutes, in the back of our legs, the hamstrings and the calves, all the way down the back of our body. And this has a lot of ramifications physically and emotionally. And so what happened to me recently is that this was maybe a couple weeks ago, 2-3 weeks ago. I was just doing a general check-in with my body, with my energetic field. And I realized I was doing some work, and all of a sudden I was like, what is going on behind me? Because like all of the work I was doing on myself was kind of in front and to the sides. And I was like, what's happening in my back body? Like, what's going on back there? And so I sent my awareness back there, and it was super tight. It was really close to my physical body. Like normally my your etheric body stretches generally about a few inches up to maybe even a foot away from your body, depending on what you're doing. And then the aura can stretch out infinitely. And I'm a pretty expanded person because I do this work a lot of times. I've been doing this for a long time. I do this with other people. I teach people how to do this. So for me to feel like it was almost like my entire bubble, we're going to call it a bubble, the bubble of the aura that I'm sitting in, was like shifted forward. And there was no movement in my back body. It was right up against my body. It felt really tight energetically, which was of course reflected physically. And I was like, huh, that's weird. What's going on here? And so I know from doing this work that the back body is tied to denial. And that's when I first came up with this idea that I was like, oh, denial. That's definitely a trauma-based response. It's not necessarily, again, the denial isn't the fear itself. The denial of the fear is what we're trying to avoid. The denial of the incident or of processing through whatever the trauma is. And most of the time we got a lot of traumas back there. And these can be really little things. Somebody cut you off in traffic and you were like really mad, but maybe you had your kids in the car and you were just like, ugh, and you shoved it into your back, and then it's just sitting there till it's released. So in my own experience, like I noticed this and I was like, oh, this is weird. And so I started doing some work. We're going to do that work tonight in the meditation. We're going to talk a little bit more about that when we get that far. But I started doing that mental processing. That's kind of that beginning of spiritual processing, right? One is awareness. I was like, ugh, what's going on here? I noticed there's an issue. 2 is that mental processing, like what's happening back there? What is it that I've been afraid to look at? What am I storing back there that I'm holding on to that I can't release? I like to look at those things, and we're going to talk about whether it's necessary to look at those things or whether you can just release them energetically. But what happened for me was, and this is pretty common when you're working with the back body, when you start working with the energy back there, you start stirring some things up, and there's some stuff there. A lot of times it's really heavy stuff. It's kind of dark stuff because it's stuff that you couldn't deal with in the moment. And so I had some depression come up. And I have a history of depression. I've talked about it on the show, low-grade depression. I've treated it in a myriad of ways. I've used pharmaceuticals. I've used supplements. And whatever you need to do to treat your depression, do that. get a mental health professional. It's really important because it is a physical illness. And this is what's really interesting about this process, this sort of realization. This came into my awareness in a physical way. The physical back of my body was feeling weird. I'm using the word physical because to me, physical and energetic are kind of interchangeable, even though a lot of people would say that energy is a lot more subtle than the physical body. When I do a physical massage, I also work on the energetic body because it is part of the physical body. So this came into my awareness. I kind of stirred some stuff up by moving some energy. And then this depression set in. And it's always a little bit, that's definitely a trauma trigger for me. Because of my history, these questions start to come up, how long is this going to last? How bad is it going to get? Do I need to treat it? And I could actually feel the physical shift in my brain where I stopped producing what the chemicals my brain needs to produce for me to feel okay, for me to feel like I'm not depressed. It was like a switch went off in my brain, which was interesting. I've never noticed it quite so obviously before. It's usually more of a gradual thing. And this it really almost felt like a flip was switched. Yes. I was like, did I say that backward? Oh, I did. A switch was flipped. Not a flip was switched. Exactly. A switch was flipped. So I got really heavy for a while. I lost my motivation. I started having feelings about lots of different things in my life. And I was in that kind of heaviness, and I was losing my motivation, and I was right away, I was like, okay, what do I need to do? How do I get this? How do I flip this switch back to the on? Because it's in the off in my brain. Because this is a physical illness. Depression is a physical illness. And of course, an energetic illness, because everything is integrated, right? So while I was kind of dealing with trying to figure out what was going on, and how to help myself so that it didn't get worse, so I didn't get kind of stuck in it, because that is one of the risks of this heavy energy of depression, is that you can get stuck there. I realized some really interesting things. I actually just had another realization today. And this is one of the most amazing things when you have the courage to step past denial, when you have the courage to stir up that back body, to bring things forward into your awareness, you can really get a lot accomplished. And again, I'm going to talk about that a little bit more about in terms of a mental health approach and an energetic approach, but I want to get through kind of my realizations. So what I realized, and I am telling you that I have been depressed on and off since I was 16 years old. And this is the first time I've ever had this realization. And it probably has been true this whole time. When I feel depressed, it is because I am overwhelmed. And we talked about getting overwhelmed a couple weeks ago when we talked about responsibility and overcommitment. And I have a tendency to be, I won't say easily overwhelmed, because I am who I am. I have a tendency to feel overwhelmed, to feel like I've overcommitted because of the things we talked about in that episode. And so all of a sudden, it was like this light bulb went off, and I was like, wait a minute. So this depression is because I got so overwhelmed. There's a lot of things going on in my life. We're going to talk about some of that next week, I think. But there's just a lot of moving parts in my life right now. There's a lot of change. There's a lot of things happening. And so I got completely overwhelmed, kind of on all fronts, like in my personal life, in my work life, in my physical body life. I just got completely overwhelmed, and I shut down. And what does shutting down look like? Shutting down for me looks like that switch in my brain actually going from the on position to the off position that produces the serotonin and the dopamine and the norepinephrine and all of the neurotransmitters that worked together to create mood stabilization, to create mood elevation so that you don't have this depression. And I started thinking back to all the periods in my life when I got really depressed. And I was like, what do you know? They were all times when I was completely overwhelmed, when there was too much going on in my outer world. too many commitments, too many things happening. It happened a lot when I was in school, and anybody who's been in any, high school, happened in college, happened when I was in ultrasound school. There is a lot to deal with. You've got multiple classes going. You've got assignments. If you're an overachiever like I am, then, you've got anxiety about being good enough and getting everything done. And we're going to talk about that a little bit, because that was the next realization I had. We're digging here, right? We're doing spiritual excavation. So you start with the denial. I don't know nothing's happening. I'm fine. Excavate a layer. Oh, maybe I'm not fine. Excavate a layer. Oh, now I'm depressed. Excavate a layer. Wait a minute. Depression is really just overwhelm. So that switch that flipped in my brain was it was basically like when you blow a circuit. That's exactly how it feels to me. There's too much going on. You blow a circuit and everything shuts down. And you get tired and you get depressed and you lose your motivation, and then the actual chemicals in your brain change, and that can be a very vicious cycle. So that was a huge realization, and I was like, okay, well, I'm overwhelmed. What can I do? I need to let go of some things. And so then when I felt into that, when I started doing I read some cards, I had really good card readings. And one of the things was that my spiritual support team, which we talked about in one episode, wants to take some of my overwhelm, but I won't give it to them, which we talked about rigidity, right? Which is really kind of that fear of losing control. So because of all these trauma-based fears that kind of came up at the same time, that have been dormant maybe, or that I was in denial about, I was shoving behind me, all of this stuff is really integrative. We've sort of separated this into episodes, and I think I've said this every episode, but this stuff, it's really hard to separate this stuff. So I was like, okay, how do I get out of overwhelm? And my spiritual support team was like, give us some stuff. Give away some things. Give away some things in the physical world. Give something to your husband and actually trust him to do it, because he will do it. You don't have to be the only one who feels like you can do things. And that is absolutely a trauma-based fear, that rigidity and fear of loss of control. Like, if I don't do this, it won't get done, right? That's a trauma-based fear. So I started making the changes that they suggested and giving things away, which is hard. It's hard for me to do that. But then some other things started coming up, and I just had this realization today, like, what's underneath the overwhelm? Because there's something underneath, and next week we're going to talk about uncertainty, and I really think uncertainty is kind of what's underneath a lot of stuff. But like so many other things that we've talked about, and I've talked about this for myself, what I realized was that is issues of self-worth are underneath this overwhelm. I was thinking about the different ways I'm overwhelmed because something's not going right in my life. It's because I'm not good enough. It's because I'm not doing enough. It's because I don't deserve it to go better. If I'm overwhelmed because something's going well in my life, then it's more like, oh, this could be taken away at any moment, right? There's that scarcity thinking. I don't deserve to have this good thing happen to me. And so underneath this overwhelm of this sort of myriad of things, some of which are like, there were some things I was feeling really frustrated about that felt stagnant. There's some things that are like blowing up so much that they feel a little bit like they're out of my control. Underneath all of that stuff is this son of a something-y, pesky self-worth issue that I have been dealing with for my entire life, that I think a lot of us deal with for our entire life. I was texting with a friend about kind of claiming your power and sort of new agey terms that are really like new agey terms for self-worth, feeling like you deserve good things, feeling like you deserve good things to happen to you in your life, in your career, all of that stuff. And it all comes back to that, what my friend Paul Bucky at BioTouch would say, letting yourself be loved. Letting yourself recognize that divine spark that means that you are inherently worthy. And so nothing outside of you can affect your worth. And so when you start thinking about it that way, like I just had this realization like today or maybe yesterday, so I'm still kind of processing it. But I wanted to go through those steps because I want you to see the power of working with denial, working through denial. Because I work with energy for a living in one of my jobs, massage, bodywork, energy, sound healing. All of that stuff is working with energy. And some people would argue that everything is working with energy. I thought everything was energy, and I'm doing a money course, and I realized I didn't think of money as energy. I didn't think of money as sacred, which is a whole other story for another day. But if everything is energy, and it is, then if you are denying a whole portion of your bodily energy, of your physical and energetic field, if you're shoving things back there and they're just getting stuck, there is a lot to unpack there. But it is so worth it, because I went over the course of a couple weeks from getting into this depression, worrying about where it was going to go, getting out of it by realizing that it wasn't really even depression. It was overwhelm, understanding what overwhelm means for me, asking for help with the overwhelm, which I did spiritually and in the physical world. And now that energy of depression is gone. It has lifted. The overwhelm's still kind of hovering. It's ready. It's there to come at any time if I'm going to let it back in. But I made a huge transformation there in a really short period of time, because I was willing to look at what was going on behind me that I couldn't see. So let's talk just briefly about working with denial. How do we work with denial before we get into the meditation? And so one of the questions that comes up a lot when I'm working with people, whether it's physically, emotionally, virtually, in person, do I have to know what this energy is to release it? And the answer to that a lot of times is no, you really don't. Sometimes you can just release something and it's gone and it never comes back. But when we're dealing with anything that's trauma-based, when we're dealing with anything that's deep-seated, anything that's a core belief, anything that feels like it's part of who you are because you acquired it at such an early age, or you came in karmically with already this energy of this belief around you, as I've said in every episode, I really think that a two-pronged approach is what is most effective. So yep, you can go in, we can step into an energy work session and I can clear your back body for you and release a bunch of energy, and probably within a matter of days or weeks, that will be back. That heaviness, whatever it was, will be back. Because there's something underlying that emotionally that needs to be looked at, that needs to be dealt with, which is why I'm such a proponent of also doing something like therapy or coaching, something that deals with the mental layer, the mental deals with the mental and emotional, the physical, energetic also deals with the emotional, but understanding what's happening. So I started by clearing my back body and I felt a lot better. But while I was doing that, I stirred some stuff up that then kind of came forward for me to see. And so if I hadn't been willing to look at that, I would still be stuck in my depression. But because I was willing to look at it, I was willing to work with the energy and see what it was and look at what was underneath, do that excavation, get my tools out. I was pulling cards, I was meditating, I was doing qigong, I was doing everything I had at my disposal. I was asking for intuitive guidance. That is how we work with these things. So when you're dealing with a trauma, getting a mental health professional, whether it's a licensed professional or someone that does coaching, and a good coach will always refer you to a licensed mental health professional when you're dealing with something that's out of their scope of practice. And then also working with somebody energetically, that is the most effective way to fully release this stuff. We can release it energetically, we can understand it mentally, but when we put those two things together, that is like the 1-2 punch that can really finally clear these things out so they don't keep coming back. And it is sometimes it feels like something left and then it came back, but really a lot of times what happens is that we've excavated further, right? So we let go of a whole layer of stuff. And we're like, yeah, that's gone. Like me and I don't need any self-worth work. I'm doing fine. I feel good about myself. I am love. I am light. I'm divine. And then we get to the next layer of our archaeological dig, right? And it's like, oh, and it feels a little bit like that stuff came back. But the things that you fully cleared never come back. They are gone. what happens is that as you excavate further, as somebody called it an onion the other day in the class I was in, you peel back the layers of the onion. Well, there's another layer of the onion, right? So there's another excavation layer in your archaeological dig that pulls up deeper stuff. But the amazing thing is that the deeper you go, the deeper the release is, and the more expansion you get in between each release. So I'm still doing the work that I've been doing for 20 years, but when I release now, it is like a full release, and it expands space so that I can keep expanding. And that is our goal, right? Clarity, expansion, and harmony. Clarity, getting clear about what's happening. What was happening in my back body? I didn't even know. I didn't even know that it was all tight and blah, because a lot of times it's been that way for so long that it feels like part of us, right? It's like when you have, I work on a knot on somebody and I'll say, man, this is a rough knot. I've got a knot there. I don't know. I guess it feels a little tight because it's been there for so long. It feels like it belongs to you. It feels like it's part of you. So as we clear stuff, then we make space for expansion. We get clear, we make space for expansion, and then we invite that harmony in, which is that beautiful golden divine light and love. So the last thing I want to say as we get into talking about the meditation is that we've done back body work before. I've talked about it on the show a couple times, and there is a specific meditation that I usually use for back body work called bone cleaning. And that is something that came to me as part of that channeling process of writing my book. If you're interested, read the book, learn more about it, reach out and ask me questions. But we're not going to do that tonight. We're going to work with this in a different way. So, and the other thing I wanted to say is that if you want to do bone cleaning, there is an episode called Spiritual Deep Cleaning where we do a nice full body bone cleaning. It's kind of a longer episode because the meditation is longer. And originally when I was going to talk about this, I was thinking I would say like bone cleaning is step 1 and like what we're doing today is step 2. But I don't think that's necessarily true. I think you can do either one, whatever calls to you. If you're really digging deep and working with some denial, you might do both, because we're going to work with different aspects of the physical and energetic body. So bone cleaning is where we actually work with the bones, and energetically we kind of brush and pick and get all the gunk, because gunk tends to collect around our bones. This back body gunk tends to collect around all of the back parts of our bones, especially the tailbone, the sacrum, and then the shoulder blades, the back of the sternum. Like that is where a lot of this denial gunk, this energy of denial, collects. But what I realized the other day when I was working with myself was, we have worked with our energetic field before. We don't go really deep into energetic anatomy. That's not what this show is about. But, we travel outside of our bodies sometimes. We travel into the aura. We use that space. We expand ourselves into that space. That is a part of our energetic body. And I would argue it's a part of our physical body, even though we can't see it. So being aware of what's happening behind you in energetic space, right at the back of your body, right behind your body, in the space behind your body, is equally as important as this bone cleaning process. So what we're going to do in the meditation tonight is work with that energy at the back of the body. So we're going to do some brushing, which is something that we do in bone cleaning. We're going to kind of brush the back of our body to move some of that stagnation, because I guarantee you there's stagnation back there in every single person that's listening to this has some stagnation in the back body somewhere. And then we're going to kind of bring some clarity. We're going to clear that energy. We're going to invite that harmony and that beautiful light and love. Whenever we clear space, we always want to fill it with that divine energy that we are made of. And the last thing I want to say about the meditation, I don't want to get too far into exactly what we're going to do. There's going to be a lot of light language in this meditation because it is super highly effective at moving energy. And when I do these meditations, I'm doing them with you. I'm doing them on myself, but I am also holding the space for you to facilitate your clearing, your expansion, your harmony. So when I use light language, it comes through the transmission and kind of amplifies any of the energetic intention I'm setting for you to help you clear. So if you're not familiar with light language, we've talked about it on the show. It sounds a little bit like gibberish. It just sounds like I'm ashatana ye tata. It sounds like I'm just saying syllables that make no sense. But it is a channeled transmission that comes to me from my higher beings, from my dimensional frequency expansion beings, from my spiritual support team. That is a really effective way to move energy. So you'll hear that probably throughout the meditation. Just let it come into your field and know that anything I transmit ever is for the highest good. It's for your highest good. It's for my highest good. It's for the highest good of the collective. So even if this is a little bit outside of your comfort zone, or it sounds a little bit strange to you, some of the sounds that I make vocally sound a little bit weird. This is all for your highest good, to help move energy, to help clarify, to help expand, to help bring harmony, so that you can live a more fulfilled life, a happier life, so that you can maybe finally step out of your pattern of depression that you've had for years that was really not even depression. It was, underneath it was really overwhelm that led to the depression. I will never say that something is not depression. It's just really interesting when we're willing to pull back those layers, when we're willing to look, the things we can find, the things we can clear. It all just brings us closer to recognizing our true inherent worth. And it's a process. We're a work in progress, and we're always going to be. But the more we clear, the more space we have to fill with that light and love and that divine knowing of who we truly are. So let's meditate together. So for this meditation, I do recommend that you sit up if at all possible. This is going to be a fairly active meditation. And just keep in mind, if I ask you to move your body in any way that you are not able or willing to, if it doesn't feel comfortable for you, you can always just use intention, especially when we're working with the back of our body. It's hard. I can't get my hands all the way behind my back and my head. So a lot of times it's more just using intention. So take a nice deep breath in through your nose, sigh it out like I just did. Let yourself come present, perhaps for the first time today. Check in with your body. Breathe into any areas of tension. Feel your feet on the ground, or your bottom on the ground, whatever's closest or connected to the ground. Just feel that connection. Take a few more nice deep cleansing breaths. Just prepare yourself to do this important work of clearing and expanding the back body. So as you're ready, begin to bring your awareness to the back side of your body, all the way from your head down to the back of your feet. Just kind of scan through. You can start at your head. Just scan through and notice just first of all how the physical back of your body feels. Does it feel really tight? Does it feel uncomfortable or painful? Does it feel like it's flowing and open? And don't judge yourself here. Just notice. The back of my neck is always tight. I'm going to move my head and neck around a little bit, maybe shrug my shoulders a few times, just giving the physical body a little attention here in the back. We spend so much of our time focused forward and not much of it paying attention to the back. So after you scan through the physical body, take a few deep breaths as you do this. Maybe move a little bit. Feel yourself come more settled into whatever position you're in. And then I want you to bring your awareness past the back of your body, just to the outside of the back of your body. Maybe just within about a foot, 6 inches to a foot, maybe even closer. Let your intuition guide you here. And notice how this feels here. And if you're not used to feeling your own energy, that's okay. Your intuition will give you hints. So you might feel uncomfortable. You might feel uncomfortable doing this, and that is actually a sign that that there's some tightness back there, that maybe there's some holding and stagnation. As you kind of scan back, you might feel that this area is really tight up against your body. You might feel really expanded and flowing, and that's beautiful. So as you scan through the back of your body, away from your body a little bit in that energetic field, notice, maybe there are certain areas that feel good and flowing. Maybe there are certain areas that feel a little bit tighter or like the energy's not moving. If you'd like, you can use your hands. You don't have to put them behind your body, but you can use them out to the side to kind of just give yourself a little more physical, tangible feeling of what's happening in the back of the body. And as you kind of scan down, and again, if you can't do this physically, just use your intention. Notice where it feels tight. Notice maybe nothing feels tight. Maybe you feel heat somewhere. A lot of times as we get to an area of our energetic field that is calling for attention, you'll feel some heat. Either that part of your body will heat up or your hands will heat up. So just spend a little time here scanning through the back of the body, noticing what you feel. And if you don't feel anything, that's fine. You can come back to this as many times as you'd like. You can continue on to do this clearing work regardless of what you feel. This is just a little short exercise to get you comfortable with feeling into the energetic part of your physical body rather than just the part you can see. So now take a couple of deep breaths if you'd like or not. Just let yourself kind of come still again if you were moving. And then what I want you to imagine here is that you have a really gentle, soft brush. Kind of like a broom, but much softer than a broom. And start to brush from the top of your head, from above your head, focusing on the back side of your body. Start to brush down with this brush. And again, you can use your hands physically to do this. It's kind of hard to get them behind the body. So you can actually do this in front of the body if you feel called to move your physical body, to move your hands. Sometimes that does help us kind of visualize what we're doing. But you can also just stay completely still and use your intention. So we're brushing along the back of the body. And here's where the fun part of the energy work is. Right now, we don't care what we're brushing away. We don't need to know what it is. We don't need to delve into anything. If you do have anything come up, just take note of it and perhaps make a promise to yourself that you will work with that later if you have an emotion or a memory or something come up. But for now, we're just brushing. We're just cleaning. When you clean your floor, you don't necessarily ask it why it's dirty, you just clean. So keep this brushing. I'm going to do a little bit of energetic work and light language to kind of help facilitate this brushing happen for those who are watching this both now and in the future. Ashateyayeta, oshetaye, ashata, eyataye, ataye, ataye, ataya, hoshenaye, 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 Eshata, 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 Shata, Eshata, Hosheyata, Hosheyata, Oshateya, 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 Oshateya. Keep brushing. Again, you don't have to physically move, but you can hear the pace of my voice. This is a fairly brisk, active movement. We're brushing quickly, just like you might brush or sweep a floor with a broom. We're just kind of sweeping that unneeded energy, that any areas of heaviness or denseness, pain, discomfort, anything that feels like it's contracted, any areas of fear. And I'm doing this physically for the camera, partly just to kind of show you what it looks like if you're just thinking about it. But again, you don't have to be moving. You can just be physically, intentionally, mentally moving, not physically moving. Hoshaye tanayesha, oshataye, oshatanaye, heshataye, oshe, 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 oshe. Ashatayena, Ashatanaye, Hoshatanaye. And then allow yourself to become still here. Let go of the brushing for a moment. Notice how you feel. Scan back through the back of your body, that physical body. Scan back through that area beyond your body, your auric body, your etheric body, the energetic bodies. And notice if anything feels different. Notice if any of the areas that maybe felt tight or uncomfortable have changed. Sometimes when we sweep, it can actually increase discomfort for a brief amount of time. So if that's happened, don't panic. Just kind of stick with your breathing. Sometimes when we stir things up back there, it gets uncomfortable. And we're going to clear anything that's stirred up. So don't worry about that. Just notice. Just notice if anything's changed. And if nothing feels different to you, that's completely fine. Know that the intention of this, know that the light language that I transmitted through is doing this work whether or not you feel it. And your intention is so powerful in doing this work, even if you're not feeling it. So what we're going to do now is just release anything out of this space that's no longer serving us. So what I want you to picture now is that this brush this is a stiffer brush, if you're sticking with a brush visualization, more like a push broom that you might use outside on your driveway. And you're just sweeping all the way from the top of your head down into the ground. Hushatea, Oshatea. And we're just clearing away anything we've stirred up that no longer serves us. And again, you don't have to do any physical movement here. You can just use intention. You can just picture the brush. You can picture any other kind of tool that comes to your mind. And this is a pretty vigorous movement. We were brushing in kind of short strokes. These are long strokes from the top of the head down, all the way down, releasing anything that is no longer serving our highest good into the earth where it will be recycled to serve the highest good. Oshatea naye, Oshatea naye, Otayeya, Otayeya, Tayeya, Shatayeya, Oshatayeya. And then as you're ready, come still from that. Let go of that exercise. If you feel like you need to move your physical body a little bit, if you feel like something's stuck and you need to kind of go back and rebrush it, you can do that. And take a nice deep breath, sigh it out, and then once again, just kind of notice how you feel. Notice how the back area, back of your physical body, the back beyond that physical body into the energetic body feels. And for the last part of this meditation, we've cleared some beautiful space here. And so what we want to do now is call in that beautiful, divine, golden, unconditional light and love that is that true essence of our soul, of our nature. We're going to call that in to fill this space. We've cleared away any of those other energies that are no longer serving us, and now we're calling in this beautiful divine light and love. So imagine the top of your head opening, that crown chakra, and call this in with a strong intention. I call in my divine light and love. That is the source of what I am. That is me. I call in unconditional light and love. And then allow it to flow in as we often do through the top of our head, but focus on the back of the body here. So allow this to flow in like a fountain outside of the body to the back of the body, this beautiful golden light and love. You can think of your waterfall of joy here if you're familiar with that. You're just bathing in this flow of golden light and joy and bliss. And let it come in through the head, let it flow down through the back of your head. Again, focus on the back of your body for this meditation, down through the back of your neck, through the back of the shoulders, the back of the upper arms, the back of your forearms and your hands. Let it flow down into the back of your upper back, into your mid back and low back, into the back of your hips, into those gluteal muscles into your bottom, the back of your thighs down those hamstrings, the back of your knees, back of your lower legs through the calves there, all the way down into the ground, through the heels, through the back of the feet. And just invite this flow to continue. You've got this beautiful fountain of light coming in to the back of your body energetically, to that area beyond your body. It's just flowing down like a beautiful fountain. It's flowing down through the back of the physical body. Let yourself be in this flow for the next few moments here as we step into sound. Allow this sound to call this beautiful light and love fully into this newly cleared space in the back body. Yay, ha, ooh, ha, ooh, ha, ooh, ha, hey, ah, oi, how, oi, how, oi, how, how, how. Bathe in this flow for the last few moments here. Fill up this back of your body, this beautiful space that we so often neglect. Fill it with light, fill it with love, fill it with the letting go of judgment of yourself and others. Fill it with that knowing of your divine source, of your inherent worth, of that beautiful divine flame that is at the core of your being. If you'd like, leave that crown chakra open for this flow of the highest good, or you can gently allow it to close. And once more, just scan through the back of your body, the physical body, that space beyond your body, coming down through the head and the area beyond the back of your head, through the neck and shoulders and that area beyond, through the chest, upper back, torso, and that area behind the back, through the tailbone and your bottom, the back of your legs, the area beyond these physical parts of you, the back of the lower legs down into the earth. Feel your connection to the earth here. Allow that connection to remain strong. For your highest good, the earth is here to support you. Take 1 or 2 more deep breaths here. In through the nose, sigh them out. Use that ha sound if you'd like. Maybe start to move gently. Move your head and neck. Maybe shrug your shoulders. Move the wrists and ankles, hands and feet. Just coming fully back to yourself here. And noticing how spacious you might feel. If you don't feel that way, that's fine. You can come back to this. But with our intention, with our energy and our light language, we've created this beautiful opportunity to be spacious and expanded in that back part of ourselves where we tend to shove the things we're not ready to see. Perhaps we're now ready to look at something so that we can fully release it. And I encourage you to reach out for help to work through that with someone if you'd like, if you're called to. Affirm with me out loud. I am fully present in my body. I am fully present in my body, and my back is spacious. I am fully present in my body, and my back body flows effortlessly. Give yourself another moment or two to come back fully into the present. Move in whatever way calls to you. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me this evening. Allow yourself the gift of bringing forward the things that you were not ready to see in the past, and trust that you have the tools to see them now, and that there is help and support out there for you. You don't have to do this yourself. There's so much support outside of you, spiritual support, physical support. Have a beautiful rest of your evening and a spacious rest of your week, and I will see you next week for Wind Down Wednesday.